child stood beneath twin moons encased in iron, staring at a world he no longer belonged to. The armor was too large for him. It clanked when he walked, echoing a sound that didn't belong to a child. But this was the way. This was survival. This was honor. His face, now hidden forever, was no longer his own, but a sigil etched into myth and creed. The Mandalorian helmet was not merely a mask, it was a tomb. He did not cry. Mandalorians do not cry. He breathed in silence the way his forebears had and stared at the burning wreckage of his childhood scattered behind him in molten ash, family gone, innocence incinerated, identity replaced. The creed saved him, and yet something vital had been buried with his name. This is the contradiction. In the galaxy of Star Wars, salvation often arrives in the form of a new prison. The Mandalorians, warrior monks bound by code, wrap themselves in armor so tightly they can no longer feel the warmth of sunlight on their skin. Jedi in turn strip themselves of attachment so thoroughly they forget how to love. Both call this discipline, both call this peace, but beneath the surface lies a question neither can answer. What is left of the soul when freedom and belonging are forged in the same fire? Consider Din Djarin, the Mandalorian. A child of war, raised by zealots never permitted to show his face, he speaks of the creed with reverence, even when it condemns him to solitude. He kills to protect it, lives to embody it, and yet, the longer he walks the galaxy, the more silence grows within him, not just from the helmet but from within. When he meets Grogu, something shatters. Not all at once, not visibly, but inside an ancient paradox awakens. The tension between armor and intimacy, between honor and humanity. He begins to touch again, first through actions, not hands. He protects, he chooses, he disobeys, and each deviation from the creed is not weakness but awakening. His honor demands the mask, his love demands its removal. Is love betrayal then, or is it the final act of truth in a world addicted to obedience? There is a reason the Mandalorians cannot remove their helmets. The moment the face is revealed, the illusion cracks. We see the child, the orphan, the frightened soul who clung to armor because there was nothing else left. The galaxy devours the weak. Creed is a shield, but every shield over time becomes a wall, and walls don't just keep the world out, they keep the self in. The Jedi, too, once believed in selflessness to the point of erasure. Anakin was told to let go of all attachments, even as his very soul screamed for connection. The Mandalorians, in a darker mirror, offer the opposite. Hold on to identity so tightly that you suffocate within it. In both cases, the self is sacrificed. In both cases, freedom is rebranded servitude. We are taught that strength is silence, that love is weakness, that duty is more sacred than the heart. But at what point does duty become denial? At what point does honor become a cage? Din Djarin doesn't know yet. He walks the line with every step, his past dragging behind him like a ghost. He is not lost, but he is not free. He is a relic of an ideology that cannot make room for the trembling hand of a child reaching up toward him. He speaks the creed, he follows the way, but one day, sooner than he expects, he will have to choose which is more sacred, the armor he wears or the soul he hides beneath it. When the way demands you sacrifice the very thing that makes you human, is it still the way? The mind, when trapped, grows brittle. The Mandalorians are bound by a creed that demands absolute loyalty, but absolute loyalty is a form of self-denial. In their silence, they refuse to confront the darkness inside them, a shadow lurking in the gaps between their rigid codes. This is not strength, it is repression. And repression, whether of emotion, identity, or even the self, only deepens the wound. When Din Djarin watches Grogu, something shifts. The child's need, his very presence, forces Djarin to face what he's hidden. The longing for connection, the emptiness of an existence built on isolation, yet to embrace this shadow would mean risking everything he has built. To love, to feel, to show his face, it's a violation of everything he's ever known. The Mandalorian way demands the armor, the way of the heart demands the mask be removed, and Djarin cannot reconcile the two. Yet the more he seeks to protect the child, the more his own humanity awakens, an awakening he resists, fearing the cost of breaking free. It is a classic case of what Jung calls the shadow, the part of ourselves we repress to survive. The Mandalorian creed is not just a set of laws. It is a defense against confronting the parts of themselves that are unworthy, unfit, or broken. The child's love, his need for connection, brings to the surface what the Mandalorians would rather ignore, their deepest, most human desires. But in this repression lies their doom. The Jedi, too, embody this paradox. They are often presented as paragons of virtue, yet their philosophy is steeped in denial. the denial of the will to live, to desire, to truly engage with the world. They speak of peace, yet practice a form of detachment that separates them from their own inner chaos. Anakin Skywalker, caught in the grip of their dogma, became the very thing he feared. His power was never in his mastery of the Force. It was in his refusal to confront the truth of his own desires. When he lost Padme, when he lost the very essence of his love, it wasn't his attachment to her that led to his downfall. It was his refusal to feel that loss. The Jedi fear emotion because they fear the shadow it brings. They know that unchecked desire can consume them, but in their quest for balance, they've deprived themselves of the very thing that makes them whole, their vulnerability. This is the essence of Schopenhauer's view on the will, the force that drives us to live, to love, to strive. It is what gives meaning to life, but it is also the source of suffering. The Jedi's denial of the will, the Mandalorian's abandonment of self in the name of honor, are not acts of virtue. They are forms of self-destruction. The will cannot be denied without consequence. It will manifest in darker, more insidious ways. And in this, the will to power, a concept championed by Nietzsche, emerges. In the absence of true engagement with the self, power becomes the only means by which the Mandalorians, the Jedi, and even the Sith define their worth. The Mandalorians call it the way, the Jedi call it the Force. But both are expressions of an existential hunger to transcend the limitations of the body, the soul, the mind. Power in its various forms becomes the ultimate arbiter of identity. Yet it is the very denial of personal freedom that creates the hunger for power. For the Mandalorians, it is their armor, an external shell they wear to hide their fragility. For the Jedi, it is the austere discipline of their order. They impose control over the body, over emotion, over will itself. In doing so, they create a vast chasm between who they are and what they project to the galaxy. And into that chasm, darkness leaks in. The Mandalorians can kill in the name of their honor, but do they know why they fight? Djarin's journey is a journey into this very question. Each time he picks up his blaster, each time he dons his helmet, he is reaffirming the mask he has worn for years, one that shelters him from the storm within. The more he lives in the world of the Mandalorian code, the more he surrenders himself to the shadows that lurk beneath it. The Mandalorians are warriors, yes, but they are also prisoners. Prisoners of their own mythos, their own belief in the strength of the mask. The Jedi, too, are bound by their own myths. They seek peace, but they cannot achieve it because they cannot accept the truth of their own nature. The true path to peace is not in the suppression of the self, but in the acceptance of it. All its contradictions, all its darkness. Until that happens, the shadow will continue to grow. The tragedy of both orders is that they are so focused on the external battle, on duty, on honor, on power, that they neglect the real war. The one waged within the soul. Both paths, steeped in good intentions, lead to a singular dead end, the denial of the self. When honor becomes a cage, how can one break free without losing everything? The power of a lie is not in its sound, but in its silence. Across the galaxy, the Mandalorian code is revered as the guiding principle of an entire people. Honor, duty, and the will to fight define them. But what they cannot see, what they refuse to see, is how this sacred belief system has warped them into blind enforcers of their own prison. It is not just the Mandalorians who suffer from the chains of dogma, but the entire galaxy. The consequences of this hidden rot ripple outward, unseen by those trapped in the illusion of control. The Empire was built on a similar ideology. The Sith also claimed to bring order through strength. Both failed in the same way. Their blind devotion to their ideals destroyed them from within. The Mandalorians, too, are walking toward their own collapse. But it isn't just their culture that is being poisoned. It is the very fabric of the galaxy. The rebellion, too, embodies this contradiction. In their fight against the Empire, they become the very thing they despise. Luke Skywalker, the embodiment of hope, is caught between the rebellion of the Jedi and the rebellion of the soul. He confronts Vader, and in the process, confronts himself. He realizes that his battle is not just against the Empire, but against the shadow of himself. The darkness inside that, unchecked, would consume him just as it consumed Anakin. In every corner of the galaxy, from the sands of Tatooine to the forests of Endor, the destruction of the self, whether through dogma, blind loyalty, or obsession with control, has profound unseen consequences. The system is corrupted, but it's not the collapse of one faction that matters. It's the fracturing of the collective consciousness itself. The Jedi's doctrine, once a guiding light, has turned into a rigid, self-righteous structure that cannot allow for the messiness of the human experience. In their quest to safeguard peace, they have denied the very impulses that make them whole. They have severed their connection to passion, to life, to individuality, and in doing so, have severed the connection between their actions and the souls they claim to protect. The Mandalorians, too, are caught in a similar trap. They sacrifice their emotional lives on the altar of honor. But as we see with Jaren, their very need for honor becomes their doom. Each victory, each new piece of armor, builds a wall between them and the world. The Mandalorians have forgotten the difference between honor and pride. Honor can be a shield, but pride becomes a fortress, and eventually the fortress becomes a tomb. It is a system built on repression, whether of emotion, identity, or individuality. Repression breeds fear, fear breeds control, control breeds collapse. The true destruction comes not in the clash of armies or the destruction of planets, but in the unseen ways that cultures, ideologies, and minds slowly erode from within. The Mandalorians live in a perpetual state of war, not because their enemies are many, but because they refuse to face the true enemy, their own hearts. When entire systems deny the complexity of the human spirit, they breed stagnation, and stagnation in turn breeds decay. The tragic irony of the Mandalorians is that they've created a society that glorifies the very violence it can never escape. Every bounty hunter, every warrior, every lone soul in the galaxy is forced into the same cycle. Fight for the code, live by the code, die by the code. But beneath that code lies a deeper truth that none can escape. The code in all its purity is a prison. The Jedi face the same fate. They strive for a detached peace, but their detachment makes them blind to the very forces they seek to control. Their blindness leads to Anakin's fall. It leads to the fall of the Republic. It leads to the rise of the Empire. They are complicit, not in the violence of the galaxy, but in its decay. In their own denial of the self, they have become the very agents of their own destruction. But the danger extends beyond just the fictional confines of Star Wars. This erosion of the soul, this collapse of ideologies that fail to embrace the complexity of human existence, is not just a lesson for a galaxy far, far away. It is a warning. What happens when we too begin to worship systems that demand our identity be erased for the sake of honor, peace, or duty? The danger isn't just in the rise and fall of political powers. It's in the subtle, creeping fragmentation of the self that allows us to abandon empathy for ideology. It is in the desire for order that leads us to abandon our humanity. It is in the willingness to sacrifice our personal freedoms, our desires, and our passions for the sake of a greater cause, even if that cause is a lie. The collapse of the Mandalorians, the Jedi, the Sith, these are not just isolated tragedies. They are reflections of a much larger, universal truth. The true enemy is not external. It is internal. It is the slow erosion of the spirit that begins the moment we stop questioning the systems that demand our total allegiance. The minute we place ideology above humanity, we become prisoners of our own making. And if we do not learn to confront this shadow, if we do not learn to free ourselves from the cages we build, then we are doomed to repeat the same tragic cycle again and again. The hero is not the one who conquers without conflict, but the one who conquers with it. The rebellion is not born of the blasters fired or the lightsabers drawn. It is born of the struggle within. The true rebellion is not against the Empire or the Sith. It is against the mind's imprisonment by the systems that demand we surrender our true selves. It is an inner battle, fought not on the front lines but within the soul. Luke Skywalker, standing in the shadow of his father's darkness, discovers this for himself. His real struggle is not the fight against the Empire, but against the shadow within him. The fear, the doubt, the potential for rage that lies just beneath the surface. It is only when Luke embraces the darkness within, that which he has denied his whole life, that he finally finds peace. In a single act of mercy, refusing to strike down his father, Luke transcends the myth that victory must always be through force. His true power lies in his capacity for compassion, for forgiveness, for accepting the complexity of his nature. Luke's journey is one of individuation, a Jungian concept that speaks to the process of integrating the unconscious aspects of the self. To become whole, one must confront not only the external enemies, but the internal enemies. His rebellion is not against the external empire, but against the internal prison of fear, dogma, and violence that has shaped him. Qui-Gon Jinn understood this before anyone else. A rogue Jedi, a rebel within the Order, Qui-Gon was not interested in the dogma of the Jedi Council. His faith was not in their rigid teachings, but in the Force as a living, dynamic thing, something to be felt, not controlled. He understood that the true nature of the Force was not in domination or control but in surrender. In listening to what is beyond the surface, he walked his own path, trusting his intuition over the authority of others, a true rebel against the stagnation of institutionalized thought. The struggle for these characters is not just about rejecting external authority. It is about liberating themselves from the authority within. It is a recognition that the ideologies that bound them, whether the Jedi Code, the Mandalorian Creed, or the Sith Code, were all forms of self-deception. They provided structure, yes, but they also imprisoned them. They had to break free from these internal shackles if they were to find true freedom. But breaking free does not come without sacrifice. Ahsoka Tano's journey is a testament to the cost of rebellion. Cast out by the Jedi Order, Ahsoka experiences the bitterness of betrayal, the loss of family, and the heartbreak of seeing the collapse of everything she once believed in. Yet it is in this fall that Ahsoka rises. In rejecting the rigid doctrines of the Jedi, she comes to understand the necessity of living outside of dogma, embracing her own path, one that is not defined by the past but by the self she is still becoming. Her journey speaks to a profound truth. Liberation comes through the shedding of all things that seek to define you. It is the acceptance of the unknown, the willingness to step into the void with no guarantees. Yoda too embodies this rebellion. Though in his own way, his initial teachings, filled with detached wisdom, give way to a deeper understanding. In his exile on Dagobah, Yoda confronts his own hubris, his own belief in the infallibility of the Jedi teachings. It is here, in the swamp of self-doubt, that Yoda realizes the true nature of the Force. It is not just in the preservation of peace, but in the acceptance of chaos. He learns that growth and renewal come not through the denial of the self but through its complete acceptance. These figures, the rebels, teach us that true freedom lies not in the rejection of the world's systems, but in the transformation of the self. It is a liberation that begins from within, one that does not demand the destruction of the world around us, but a profound change in the way we interact with it. To rebel is not to fight in the traditional sense, it is to awaken. It is to see clearly, and to act in accordance with what is true in the heart. The real enemy is not the oppressive systems of the galaxy, but the fear that keeps us bound to them. Each rebel, each awakened soul, teaches us that the key to true liberation is the ability to face the unknown. When Luke refuses to kill his father, when Qui-Gon listens to the Force, when Ahsoka steps away from the Jedi Order, when Yoda confronts his own doubt, they all demonstrate one simple truth. To break free from the cages we build for ourselves, we must be willing to confront our own shadows, and it is this confrontation that leads to the most unexpected of victories. In the end, the rebellion is not just about winning battles. It is about finding peace within ourselves. It is about understanding that the true war is the one we fight to become whole. In the embrace of the shadow, there is freedom. The Force does not demand, it simply is. The greatest illusion that binds all beings, be they Jedi, Mandalorian, Sith, or even those caught in the war-torn edges of the galaxy, is the belief that control is the ultimate expression of power. The truth, however, lies in the paradox. It is only by relinquishing control that we can truly be free. The Jedi and Sith alike, in their obsession with power, miss the central mystery that transcends them both. The Force does not belong to them. It is not an instrument to wield. It is a state of being, an interconnectedness with all that is. The realization that all power is ultimately a reflection of the self, and that true power comes from acceptance, not domination, is the deepest truth of the Force. It is not about bending others to your will. It is about recognizing the unity that exists in all things, recognizing that you are not separate from the Force but a living expression of it. In the cosmic dance of light and dark, good and evil, creation and destruction, the Force simply flows. The ultimate revelation comes when one understands that there is no ultimate victory, no final battle to win. The tension between light and dark is not a war to be won. It is the natural rhythm of existence. It is only the mind that seeks to categorize and conquer. In the purest sense, the Force embodies all things. It is the breath of life, the space between moments, the pulse of the universe itself. To fight it, to try to control it, is to misunderstand it. It is the great paradox of all spiritual truths. The moment you stop fighting, you become what you seek, and this is the real meaning of balance. Balance is not the absence of conflict, it is the acceptance of it. Luke Skywalker, in his final confrontation with his father, learns this lesson. It is not in his victory over Darth Vader that he becomes whole, it is in his acceptance of the darkness within, and his refusal to allow that darkness to define him. The moment Luke drops his weapon, he transcends the need for control. He no longer seeks to impose his will on his father. He seeks understanding. In that moment, his compassion opens the door to transformation. The Jedi believed that their path to enlightenment lay in the avoidance of emotion. But emotion is not the enemy. Denying it creates the imbalance. To suppress one's shadow, to reject the fullness of the self, is to deny the essence of life itself. The true path to mastery is to embrace all parts of oneself, the light and the dark, and allow them to exist in harmony. The Jedi, in their obsession with purity, forsake this path. They sought to avoid the dark, but in doing so, they created it. The final revelation is that the Force does not judge. It is not a moral entity, it simply is. In the absence of judgment, there is liberation. The Mandalorians, the Jedi, the Sith, all of them have created structures and codes that demand righteousness, purity, and control. But in the face of these false ideals, the truth is simple. We are not our actions. We are not the roles we play. We are not the masks we wear. We are the Force, the essence of being, the unity of existence. The true enemy is the illusion of separation. It is the belief that we are different from one another, that we are separate from the stars, the planets, the galaxies, and the Force itself. It is only when we understand that we are a part of this grand cosmic dance that we can truly awaken. And in awakening, we realize that the only true battle is the one we fight within, against the illusion of separation, against the false beliefs that bind us. In this final realization, there is peace. There is no more war between light and dark, no more battle between good and evil. There is only the flow of the Force, unbroken and unending. The ultimate truth is not in what we do, but in who we are, an expression of the Force itself, constantly in motion, constantly transforming. The transformation, then, is not a victory over something external. It is a victory over the self-imposed boundaries, the cages, the illusions we have created to keep us separate from what we truly are. To be one with the Force is not to control it, but to surrender to it. And in surrendering, we find our true strength, not in opposition, but in unity, not in control, but in acceptance. The battle ends the moment we stop fighting. The war is over the instant we see that there is no separation, only the Force and the flow of being that connects us all. And so the galaxy turns, not in conflict, but in quiet revelation. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the journey. If you did, don't forget to like, subscribe for more. See you next time.